When I walked into this hall earlier today, I could feel it, the buzz of ideas, the spark of ambition, and the courage to dream big. And that's exactly FITT Forward is about, creating space where dream meets direction. This afternoon, we are talking about money, mindset, and making an impact, from how to raise fund in 2025 to how to take an idea and turn it into something the world can't ignore. They say ideas are easy, implementation is hard, and it takes capital to make it real. And looking at the people we have today, I would say the future is in great hands. So fasten your seat belt, and we are going on an innovation journey together. So our panel moderated by Mr. Ankit Saxena, Investment Head and Director, DS Centre of Entrepreneurship. So sir, over to you.
Much, Prab. So, when I was preparing for the session, so I was thinking how I will pick your brain, because we had a previous session which I moderated, which was with unicorn founders, and the total market cap and combined valuation of that panel was over 100 billion. And I think I can easily say that this panel is, I think, so 3 zeros I should add to the 100 billion valuation. So a big round of applause for these amazing gentlemen. They need no introduction actually. Uh, so sir, I'll play with my strength, which is naiveness and bravery, and I'll dive straight into the discussion with 5 words and phrases, and would like to understand your interpretation of those combined words. Tariffs, China, opportunities, challenges, startups. So would love to hear from you, sir. We can start with you.
So first of all, thank you so much. It's always great to be back here in the campus. And I think those 3 zeros you're talking about is probably this man sitting here with the market cap of, I think, peak 15 portfolio companies would be quite substantial. We actually do seed to Series B, domestic fund, and we have a portfolio of about 55 companies. We invest in deep tech, and also technically we are sector agnostic. So to answer your question, I think everybody is talking about tariffs these days, and I think things are changing very dynamically these days. And I personally believe that this is a huge opportunity for India and the Indian startups. I know that there is a huge volatility with respect to how things are evolving in terms of how the policies are changing in terms of the global situation. The tariff situation is actually becoming very dynamic. We are talking about very recent tariff of 25 plus 25% from Trump, and at the same time we are also seeing how dynamically the India-China relationship is also evolving. And I see that as a huge opportunity for Indian startups. Of course, especially on the deep tech side, while Indian startups are doing quite well across all these different areas of AI and machine learning and other areas like semiconductor, space tech, defense tech, even biotech. So these are the areas which are actually coming up very well. But I think India still needs a lot of action when it comes to hardware and semiconductors. And I think that's an area where India will need support. And if the relationship with China builds up further, I think lots of these gap areas in deep tech would actually start emerging even in a different way. So I think I definitely see this as an opportunity. While there's a pressure from the American side from a tariff perspective, I think the opportunity which is building up on this side is actually a very unique opportunity. I think all this pressure which is there is all in the short term, which is actually you're going to see a huge disruption in my view. A lot of these startups which are coming up now, these guys will actually learn to be very resilient. given this kind of a situation. And if you've dealt with this kind of a situation, you will be able to build much long-term businesses. So I'm quite optimistic about the current situation in that sense.
Yeah, hi everyone. Firstly, great to be here. It's the first time I've been here. I think Vikram comes here every month. I do go to some of the other deep tech incubators more often, so I'm delighted to be here. Look, so I think as Vikram mentioned, like firstly, look, the near term tariffs do create a lot of pain, and but pain usually always leads to gain if you play it right. And I think, look, there's never been a better time to start up in India, right? I think one thing that's become very clear over the last several years is that as a nation, we have to have strategic autonomy in all critical sectors, right? Because if you just fast forward where India will be in 10, 20, 25 years, we are certainly going to be a 10 and then a $20 trillion economy. And we've seen how global geopolitics are playing out, where if you don't have access to food, energy, security, defense, advanced technology, advanced manufacturing, you're pretty much dependent on other countries. So as a nation, and I think that's what's great about the current regime that we have, I think we have a government that's very committed to building strategic autonomy in all these critical sectors. And that's an extraordinary opportunity for entrepreneurs, especially all the entrepreneurs that are here who I assume are building deep tech companies, right? And I mean, there's just never been a better time. And the only other thing I would say is, look, it takes a decade for India to go from zero to high velocity, right? 2015, India was not in the top 100 countries on digital payments. Today we have 60% of real-time digital payments. Everybody in the world acknowledges we're the most advanced digital payments ecosystem on planet Earth. 2015, India had 2 space tech startups. Today we have 220 space tech startups. And I would surmise that 10 years from now we'll be among the top 3 most advanced spacefaring nations in the world, right? So if you look at every single area that we have to be self-sufficient in, energy, right? We are now a world leader in renewables, but we need to solve storage. Huge opportunity for deep tech entrepreneurs, right? Long-term energy storage, massive opportunity. If you take semiconductors that Vikram spoke about, in about 18 months, we'll start having our first fab. Hopefully the Tata fab goes live, and then by 3-4 years, we'll have at least 5 fabs. But there's no reason why anything that's above 28 nanometer from a SoC standpoint shouldn't be built in India. So I'm hoping that there are a whole bunch of you here that are building chips, could be low power chips, high power chips, computer vision chips. In fact, India is now ready to actually start building GPU chips, right? So, and then you can keep going through all the other sectors all the way through quantum, right? I don't know how many of you know, but India has a quantum mission. It's 6,000 crores. The quantum mission of India actually led 2 of the large quantum funding rounds that happened in India. I mean, if you had asked a bunch of us that have been investing for a while whether the Indian government would lead a funding round in a quantum company, you'd be like, no, that's not going to happen. Well, the reality is actually not only has it happened once, but it's happened twice. So long way of saying, look, there are clearly challenges. The world is a very challenging place. We have wars, we have tariff wars, we have geopolitical challenges. But as entrepreneurs, I've always believed that you should focus on what you can control, and what you can control is the company you can build. And man, there's just never been a better time to build in India.
So, sir, before you start, just sorry to interrupt you. So one of the quantum hubs is set up in IIT Delhi under the National Quantum Mission. So just wanted to highlight that. So please.
I'd actually say some of this actually highlights what is actually the opportunity in India. People are looking at cross-border, but the reality, I think, in my evolution and having met some of the entrepreneurs and the team at FITT, I actually think there's a big opportunity because Silicon Valley in the US has frankly become asset managers. The big funds get all the money, they want to be in the next round, and they need to invest billions. There's nobody who's really looking at deep tech quite in the same way. And I think now looking at it from the outside, when I've heard the team at FITT talk about the cost of research and development, India has an advantage. And I think at the end of the day, India certainly has the talent. The talent that was going outside, I think, is coming back to India. And I think the main success factor that's emerging that I think will drive the tech sector and innovation in India is frankly a sea change in terms of how people view entrepreneurs. I mean, if you take a step back and you say, why did the US develop versus Europe? Well, in the US, if you were successful, you were well respected, well regarded. And in Europe, unfortunately, it depended on what school you went to. It was hard to get access if you didn't know the right people. And I think in India, what's happening, I've heard it said as a joke that when the CEO of Google was appointed, someone asked his mother, what do you think? And supposedly her comment was, well, if he studied only a little harder, he could have been an IAS officer. Now, I actually don't think that's the case. I think in India, you have this right ecosystem where people want to be entrepreneurs. And I think certainly there's capital that's available, and the government of India is actually prioritizing these sectors. So I really think you're in the right place in terms of looking at true tech, as the US firms have gotten more into asset management and larger check sizes. And I think India has all the ingredients to be really one of the world leaders in incubation and venture.
I'll repeat it was not actually a question, but your interpretation of 5 words combined together. Tariffs, China, opportunities, challenges, startups.
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you. I represent the SRI fund, the Self-Reliant India Fund, one of the sovereign fund of Government of India. Definitely, yeah, I agree with you. The tariff and other, whatever the, challenges will be there, no doubt on that. But as whatever Vikram and Mr. Rajan has mentioned, India's startup ecosystem is growing. It is going to grow. Even if you take our fund example, we have it's operational for last 4 years time, and till now we have funded near about 650 startup companies, MSME companies. Basically, this particular fund is meant for a MSME ecosystem. And we have invested in deep tech, AI based, even semiconductor based. There is one drone technology company which was participated in Operation Sindoor, setback or whatever, So there is a lot of entrepreneurial skill set is there in India. It is growing, and it'll multifold. It'll going to grow going forward. Even it'll penetrate in various kind of domain within deep tech and others, AI and machine language and others. It's going to grow, and maybe we may see this kind of whatever we have seen that unicorn and all, it's going to multifold going forward. Yeah.
In the previous panel, I asked a setting question to close the panel that, the Honorable Minister Piyush Goyal in his address during Startup Mahakumbh talked about how young entrepreneurs need to move a little away from convenience and D2C sector, and how they have to develop the deep tech solutions for the country and for the world, right? So all of them combined together, if I have to summarize, concluded by saying that, we have to see what kind of capital will support that, because it's not the traditional VC money which expects a return in 2-3 years is going to work out for those kind of startups. And in the audience, I can tell you that 90% of the founders are deep tech startups. So you are a deep tech investor. Please answer the question which Unicorns asked me, that we have to see what kind of capital is going to support this innovation.
Yeah, that's a very good question. The challenge on the deep tech investment side is that the risk return is very high in favor of the very high risk, which means that when you're investing in a company which is still in the product development phase, you're actually investing at a stage where they may be at a TRL 5, TRL 6 stage. You really don't know what eventually is going to happen when they actually hit the market, but you take a call based on what problem they're trying to solve. Is the team which is working on it, do they have the right skill set in terms of execution when they go to market? So you're actually taking a huge amount of risk at that stage. So therefore, the risk capital that you need at that stage is actually, what defines the value that which is there in that ecosystem. So when, you know, if there are entrepreneurs who are building products at that stage, if they don't find enough risk capital, then the challenge is that, you know, you don't see too much innovation. Now, India definitely needs much larger amount of risk capital as compared to what is available today. Good news is that, you know, the government is now opening up a lot more pockets of capital. We have SRI, which is actually now coming in a big way. We have SIDBI, which is actually opening a lot more pockets of capital. We have quite a few other pockets of capital opening from the different government pockets. In addition to that, we are also seeing now various corporates, which are actually starting corporate venture capital funds, which are also allocating very high risk capital. I'm personally working on creating this endowment pool of capital, which is actually focused on taking very high risk at very early stages. The idea is to really, you know, channel that capital as a more like a grant capital if possible, to invest in all these high risk companies. And I think the more and more capital is made available to all these entrepreneurs who are working on the product ideas, the more and more risk appetite you will see amongst these entrepreneurs, and therefore the more innovation will happen. So I think we are reaching that stage. I would call it, this is really stage of point of inflection, where we are seeing, you know, a very interesting combination of good quality startups coming up with good quality capital now chasing them. And therefore, the combination of that will really bring very solid innovation. If you look at over the next 5 to 7 years, I think you will see very, very interesting startups coming up in that time frame.
Want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I agree with Vikram. Look, I think for those of you that are founders that are trying to raise capital, okay, look, India does need 100x more capital when it comes to deep tech. But as Vikram said, I think that's on the way. In fact, we were on a call yesterday. The government's announced a 1 lakh crore RDI fund, Research Development Innovation Fund. 20,000 crores of that is this year, right? So that will flow into deep tech fund of funds, direct investments into deep tech startups, etc. So I think that will happen. I think as founders, what you should try to focus on is, one, depending on the stage that you're at, identify the investors who will invest at that stage, okay? So we are investors in semiconductors, space, quantum computing, AI infrastructure, green energy, etc. But as a firm, even at seed stage, we go in between TRL 7 and 9, okay? So if you're a TRL 3 or 4 company approaching us, it's, you know, we'd love to spend time, we'll get to know you. Whereas on the other hand, like let's say Speciale, right, which is one of the, India probably today has a dozen very, very good deep tech only early stage funds. So Vishesh and his team at Speciale, they go in at TRL 4, TRL 3, right? So I think that's the first thing, is identify, depending on your stage, you know, who are the right set of investors. I think the second thing is really understanding what are investors looking for at your stage, okay? So last week, Adit, my colleague, is here. A bunch of us were at IIT Madras for 2 days, the IIT Madras Incubator Research Park. We met, I don't know, 30, 40 companies, okay? The reality is, if you're at TRL 8, you know, you got to know who your customers are. You got to have design partners. You got to be, you know, you don't have to have revenue, but you need to be commercially very, very savvy. So some of the best companies that we met had, you know, from a technology standpoint, they had really interesting technology, but they did not have the commercial instincts, right? Where we have to believe that you're going to go from TRL 8 or 9, okay, it takes a few years to get to revenue, but certainly over the next decade, you're going to be a 1,000 crore, 2,000 crore, 3,000 crore revenue company. If we can't see that, we're not going to invest. Now, we don't expect you to be a 1,000 crore company in 2 or 3 years, but over a decade, you need to be a sizable company, right? So I would say, you know, as founders, being very, very thoughtful, doing your research, who are the right investors, what are investors looking for? And then the last thing I would say is, look, it doesn't matter whether you're building an AI company, a gaming company, a fintech company, or a deep tech company. There's a myth that you only have to talk to 2 or 3 investors. You have to talk to a large number of investors. So don't get disheartened, keep going, but be smart about it, right? Which is keep talking. So there is a shortage today of deep tech funding, but look, the reality is we'd love to invest a lot in many more deep tech companies. I mean, why would I think there were 10 of us. We spent 2 full days at IIT Madras Incubator. not because we, because we really, really, really want to find companies, right? So, and there's lots of capital, whether it's the mainstream funds like Vikram asks, or the specialist deep tech funds. So there's enough capital. I think it's you should get, all of you should be just sharper in terms of how to raise capital.
I think, again, I'll talk a little bit from a US perspective where there's a very well-developed marketplace. You know you're a Series A, you're pre-money, you're only SaaS. And so I think the US at least has that advantage that it's kind of geared to, what your industry is and how to go to those segments. I think in terms of what we're seeing though, and I think what will help in India is to broaden, you definitely need the government support at this stage to inculcate and to support this growth. But I also think that from a US perspective, there are other attributes beyond just your tech. I'm an investor in a beverage company. PepsiCo happens to be a partner. And it's a great technology. It takes 85% of the supply chain costs away. But who's investing in us? It's a pension fund because they see the sustainable element of less driving, less plastic, and yes, they want it to be a good investment. So I think in terms of the Indian market, you'll have sort of, the government has to be supportive today, but I think there are going to be more and more other sources, and you should also think about your project not just in the context of the solution, but the benefits it has, because there's many more family offices and pension funds who are more mission-driven and can wait 10 years or 9 years or 8 years versus the funds that have a shorter horizon. So I think diversifying those sources, but also understanding how you can pitch it to that client is also important. And you might be surprised, like we are, in terms of looks like who's coming into the next round. It wasn't on my bingo card list.
SRI fund, right? How is that going to support deep tech startup and their journeys?
Yeah.
What is your vision for the
yeah.
deep tech startup ecosystem?
Yeah, yes, Ankit. See, like what I mentioned earlier, this is a sovereign fund under Ministry of MSME. We have funded, as I mentioned earlier, near about 650 companies, mainly the growth stage, because ideally we are supposed to invest in a growth stage, but some of our investment went into the, startup stage also. And it is in various vertical, deep tech, AI, fintech, various vertical, including education technology, the e-commerce and everything. And some of our investing company, if I want to highlight about SRI, including the Lenskart, Zepto, Mama Earth, then Cello World, both in deep tech and even the other manufacturing space also. And till now we have invested more than 2,000 crores, and the fund size around 10,000 crores. And so it has a life of around 15 years. But it is a sovereign fund of fund. It's not a directly invest in a startup or maybe growth phase company. It's a fund of fund. We empanel the SEBI registered AA funds. Till now we empaneled closer to around 70 AA funds. We empaneled, including IvyCap and others. So they in turn invest in any deep tech and AI semiconductor based company. But we provide the finance through the Ministry of MSME. It comes from the Government of India budget allocation. So, our focus, is a sector agnostic, not that one particular sector we have to invest in. But most of the money, if you see for last 3.5 years, it went into mostly in the deep tech and, all the high tech and fintech and, space tech and others. One of our investing company I have to highlight, like what I mentioned about the new space research, it's mainly the Tron side. Even we have funded Trons as well as even the defense tech, more than some around 11, 12 companies till now. So it's a sector agnostic, it's open to anywhere, open to any sectors. And all new ideas we are inviting, and we are investing in all the new ideas.
Sir, some of my questions are also my own learnings which I want to take from you. So I request the attendees not to mind my questions. So in a deep tech startup's journey, right, an entrepreneur cannot venture alone, right? They need partners from across the globe. the tech is too complicated to be resolved within one geography, right? And with the current kind of, geopolitics transpiring across the globe, how do you see your startups are maneuvering?
These, in the long term, these entrepreneurs will be very, very successful.
Yeah, I think, look, basically, deep tech, firstly, deep tech is very new in India, okay? What the US has been very important for our ecosystem is for software products. For SaaS companies, now AI companies, 30 to 40% of new seed funded companies are building for the globe, which really means building for the US. Now, at least at this point, there's no tariffs on services and software. Now, if that happens, we have a bigger problem than that. But I do think when it comes to founders, I mean, my number one thing is just focus on things you can control. You can't control what different leaders of different countries are going to do tomorrow, right? I think the second thing, but deep tech, actually the demand for deep tech is going to be in India first and foremost. Okay, let me take semiconductors. Semiconductor consumption in India today, last year was about 30 billion. Conservative estimate is by 2030 it get to 100 billion, okay? This is domestic consumption of semiconductors, 100% today designed outside of India, made outside of India, okay? That's $100 billion consumption market in 5 years, and by 2040 that could get to 2 to 300 billion of chip consumption, okay? So that's one. Second, you look at defense. I know there's a bunch of defense companies here building, right? Look, the reality is the most important priority that we have as a nation is to indigenize defense. We want to make sure that we have the drones, we have the rockets, we have the protection systems, we have everything, the AI. The defense procurement today is about 30 billion. That number is going to go to 100 billion, right? And I can keep going through. We're at about 220 gigawatts of renewables capacity. It's going to get to 500 gigawatts of renewable capacity in 5 years. And that's only, even at that point, we're going to be at 50% renewables as a percentage of our power production, right? Then you look at what does it take to actually make a green economy work from an energy standpoint. Storage, new distribution systems. So, I can go industry by industry, but the reality is I think we're going to see in deep tech, in fact, that's one of the reasons this 1 lakh crore RDI fund was launched, was because we need to have strategic autonomy in all these critical sectors. We don't need strategic autonomy to sell to other countries. Of course, we should do that also. We need strategic autonomy so that we can feed our people, we can protect our people, we can electrify our nation, we can make sure that all our electronics run, right? And we can actually be a legitimate player in AI. So I do think that you're going to see the next 15, 20 years look very, very different in India as we go from $4 trillion of GDP to 7 to 8 to $10 trillion of GDP. And you also have a national mandate for strategic autonomy, right? So I would say for deep tech startups, try to find markets here, because if you find a market here, there's only one thing you can predict. It's just going to get gigantic in 5 years, right? And you're going to build a huge company.
I'd also say that there's a lot of short-term fluctuations in terms of what happens vis-a-vis tariffs. But when I meet with entrepreneurs, it's very important. I'm really only interested in how good is your solution and what's your comparative advantage. Who else can do better? If you have those two things together, frankly, no one else can do it. And if it has to be done outside, it's going to be a cost that everybody can bear. So I think it's very important to identify that, because when someone shows you a spreadsheet and tells you how great the returns are going to be, everybody's numbers works in a spreadsheet. And I spend, frankly, more of my time assessing what's your comparative advantage, how can you, what's the solution that you're serving, how big is it? And I think India is a perfect place because it is cheaper in terms of the research cost, and you can test and launch here. So I really think that that's going to be the future as we take a look at, the external issues don't matter if you have the best solution.
The deep tech startups in the country are going to sustain themselves given the kind of, geopolitical situation arising and changing each and every day?
See, geopolitical whatever development both in India as well as outside India, it's a going concern phenomena. It's, it's going to be there, But deep tech domain in India is growing. It will grow also. If I look at our portfolio, my portfolio itself, SRI fund portfolio itself, we have funded more than at least some 70, 80 deep tech companies in the various vertical again. Could be in defense space, it could be even aerospace, it could be in, even the agri-tech space, or even the healthcare space, even one of our deep tech company may be there in the cancer detection cell the vertical, in which they are able to detect the cancerous cells maybe well in advance without, with a lower cost also. So deep tech technology is evolving, various domain, various sectors, various industry sectors. It tend to grow, and only thing is what most of the AA funds are looking for, the university companies, the talent, talent as well as there is a moat for the business. So if there is a good moat for the business and they are able to scale up the business and with a good technology, deep technology, then definitely there will be a lot of investors at both in domestic as well as globally, they are in the queue to fund for that. So funding will not be a challenge. Only thing is the talent and even the ideas and how they are going to scale up and with a lower cost, and these are the major factors in which normally the fund like us as well as even my other AA funds also look for that.
So I'll move away from my own picking of your brains to the main question of the day to close the panel. And simple question, sir. How, what, when does it take to raise funds from IvyCap?
So we are sector agnostic, and we look at seed to Series B. Of course, we meet lots of entrepreneurs every day, and like most of the VCs do. It does help if the founders are reaching out to us through some references. That always helps. If somebody is already known in the system and somebody comes through that reference, it always helps. But we are doing a lot of automation on our side also. In fact, we're trying to create our own AI tools internally to be able to process the volumes of opportunities that come to us. In fact, we're creating a rating system so that we can really filter out the companies that need to be seen, so that the good companies that we want to see are not missed. So, basically, as long as you have an idea which you believe it can scale quite substantially, you are not looking only for funding, you're looking for funding and mentorship and support. We would like to not just give you the money, but we would like to give you a lot of hand-holding, support, access to a large network of people, help you in recruiting in your team, help you in providing technology support, and also in raising a lot more capital if you need more capital in the future. So that's what we try to do. So I think there's always capital available for good entrepreneurs and good ideas.
Answered the when part, which was TRL 7, but how and what does it take to raise funds from your?
Yeah, I think, look, with TRL 7 to 9 is if you're a deep tech company, right? Like 30% of companies that we invest in haven't written a single line of code, but they're not deep tech companies. They're either AI, application agentic companies, infrastructure companies, dev tools companies, or fintech companies. So in those segments, we're okay if without a single line of code written, we back a founder with a big idea. I think specifically if you talk about deep tech, right? Look, first we're trying to understand how special is this technology or this approach. And now when you're at TRL 7 or 8, right, it's no longer an idea, right? It's come out of the lab, etc. So I think that's the first thing. So it's got to be highly differentiated, number one. I think number two, look, we do spend time on the market saying, look, even if you're going to invest, let's say 20, 30, 50, 100 crores in a company, we need to see this company become a very large company, right? If it's only going to get to 200 or 300 crores, that's really good for entrepreneurs, not that great for a fund like ours, right? So we're trying to make sure the market is large enough. The third most important thing though is the founding team, right? As I said, like we're looking, especially in deep tech, the most important is the tech part of it, right? You need to be deeply technical. You need to really have something breakthrough that you've developed. But that by itself, we won't get there. right? It's okay to have 2 or 3 technical co-founders, but one of those technical co-founders needs to like to talk to customers, needs to like to be out there, needs to actually come across as commercially savvy. And ideally, if you have, let's say, 2 co-founders, if one is technical and one is a little more commercial, that is better. That's not to say, by the way, in fact, we have a quantum computing company called Horizon. They make quantum software, right? Joe, who's the founder, who's one of the world's most renowned experts in quantum computing, he's as deeply technical as it gets. But Joe can sell bread to snowmen. You know, like, if you can do that, you're one of the world's greatest experts in quantum, and you can sell bread to a snowman, woo, that's like amazing. Now, of course, that's kind of hard, right? So those are the things that we look for. It's breakthrough tech that's validated, it's a large market, and it's a founding team that, you know, has a good mix. Now, of course, in deep tech, what's most important is the tech, but just the tech is not something we're going to get there on, because we have to believe that you can build a large company, right? And even if you don't have experience in sales, like for instance, like last week, I think one of the most interesting companies that Adit and I met, they were a space tech company. No, they were a semiconductor company on edge semiconductors, okay? We asked a simple question like, how many customers have you spoken to? 0. So I don't understand, like, how can you, you know, how can you be building semiconductors and not know who you're going to sell it to? That's not a good thing. So those are some of the things that we look for. But hey, look, I'd say, look, we are also much like most of our firms. You should just reach out, especially if you're raising, let's say, 20 or 30, you know, less than 30 or 40 crores. We have a program called Surge. You can apply. Actually, applications closed last week for the next cohort, but you know, we'll open them up. You can just apply. We review every application, or you can email us. You know, and we obviously get lots and lots of emails. As Vikram said, if you can get referred by somebody who knows the firm, that's the best, because then we will absolutely look at it. Otherwise, you know, we're just too many, you know, like hundreds of emails, hundreds of WhatsApp messages, hundreds of LinkedIn invites every day for every investor. So it gets a bit hard to manage.
So from Atlas Advisors' point of view, right, how do startups raise funds from you?
Well, I think we're first focused on the US market, so it's a little bit different. I'm sharing my insights as to what's happening here. But I think a lot of the commonalities in investing are the same. Someone who comes in and shows you a spreadsheet saying how great the return is going to be, I'm much less interested in that than, as I said, what's your solution? How do you think you're going to win? What are your advantages? Because whatever they say that they're going to do, it's not exactly going to turn out that way, but you need to know that the fundamentals are there. And in assessing the team, I think it's how they answer those questions that gives you comfort as to who they are. If it's just a financial presentation of how life is going to be, I can make my spreadsheet look wonderful also. So for me, that's the key criteria.
Sir, how is SRI fund accessible to entrepreneurs here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a good question. See, we are accessible to all the whatever the deep tech entrepreneurs. And so you can access through our website, NSIC Venture Capital Fund. We are based out of Delhi at Oakla Industrial Estate. Myself and my team also meet a lot of entrepreneurs, even we meet a lot of AA funds also. We refer to the various AA funds who are empaneled with us and who are looking for empanelment, or maybe we study your companies, you know, your deep tech domain, which kind of a vertical, which kind of industry you are operating in. Then we'll refer to the, you know, the AA funds who are empaneled with us, or maybe some of the AA funds which are not empaneled with us also, we know them, or we may refer to some of the, even the family office also, even others also, we can refer to that. That way we can able to provide, you know, input and, you know, whatever the assistance and guidance and direction we can able to provide.
Thank you so much. A big round of applause for the entire panel. And a heartfelt gratitude, thank you from our side, from IIT Delhi, from FITT, for taking out time from your schedules and being here. The last thing which I was wondering was how we are going to maneuver out of here, because I see a huge crowd of entrepreneurs waiting to meet all of you. So thank you so much. And I had a wonderful, you know, discussion and learning from everything that you had to say. Thank you so much. Thank you.